Welcome back to the Alex Jones Show. This is Mike Adams filling in for Alex Jones today, and we're about to be joined by Paul Joseph Watson. Talk about the new resolution in Congress to extend some pretty wild powers to the president to conduct war globally. What is happening out there with the war powers resolution, and what is it that people need to know about what's coming down the line as a threat to not just their freedom but the powers of the U.S. Congress?
Obama's promise to veto worldwide war bill rings hollow. Now, this worldwide war provision is a component of the National Defense Authorization Act, which has already passed the House and is on its way to the Senate right now. And it would basically allow Obama or any future president to authorize worldwide war with no expiration date and, of course, anywhere on the globe at any time without congressional authorization, which, of course, as people familiar with the Constitution will know, is a complete violation of the War Powers Act. So basically, it gives Obama or any future president complete dictator status. They don't have to say why they're doing it. They don't have to give a pretext. It's perpetual warfare, George Orwell 1984 style. It's being called by the ACLU, who in fact have been tricked on this. We can get into that in a moment. They called it, quote, the single biggest handover of unchecked war authority from Congress to the executive branch in modern American history. And now we have a clip of Ron Paul where he slams this as the final nail in the coffin of the American Republic. So let's roll that clip.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The last nail is being driven into the coffin of the American Republic, yet Congress remains in total denial as our liberties are rapidly fading before our eyes. The process is propelled by unwarranted fear and ignorance as to the true meaning of liberty. It is driven by economic myths, fallacies, and irrational good intentions. The rule of law is constantly rejected, and authoritarian answers are offered as panaceas for all our problems. Runaway welfarism is used to benefit the rich at the expense of the middle class. Who would have ever thought that the current generation and Congress would stand idly by and watch such a rapid disintegration of the American Republic? Characteristic of this epic event is the casual acceptance by the people and the political leaders of the unitary presidency, which is equivalent to granting dictatorial powers to the president. Our presidents can now, on their own, order assassinations, including American citizens, operate secret military tribunals, engage in torture, enforce indefinite imprisonments without due process, order searches and seizures without proper warrants, gutting the Fourth Amendment, ignore the 60-day rule for reporting to the Congress the nature of any military operation as required by the War Power Resolution, continue the Patriot Act abuses without oversight, wage war at will, treat all Americans as suspected terrorists at airports with TSA groping and nude X-raying. And the Federal Reserve accommodates by counterfeiting the funds needed and not paid for by taxation and borrowing, permitting runaway spending, endless debt, and special interest bailouts. And all of this is not enough. The abuses and usurpations of the war power are soon to be codified in the National Defense Authorization Act, now rapidly moving its way through Congress. Instead of repealing the 2001 authorization for the use of military force, as we should, now that bin Laden is dead and gone, Congress is planning to massively increase the war power of the president. Though an opportunity presents itself to end the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, Congress, with bipartisan support, obsesses on how to expand the unconstitutional war power of the president he already holds. The current proposal would allow a president to pursue war anytime, any place, for any reason, without congressional approval. Many believe this would even permit military activity against American suspects here at home. The proposed authority does not reference the 9/11 attacks. It would be expanded to include the Taliban and associated forces, a dangerously vague and expansive definition of our potential enemies. There is no denial that the changes in Section 1034 totally eliminates the hard-fought-for restraint on presidential authority to go to war without congressional approval achieved at the Constitutional Convention. Congress's war authority has been severely undermined since World War II, beginning with the advent of the Korean War, which was fought solely under a UN resolution. Even today, we're waging war in Libya without even consulting with the Congress, similar to how we went to war in Bosnia in the 1990s under President Clinton. The three major reasons for our constitutional conventions were to guarantee free trade and travel among the states, make gold and silver legal tender, and abolish paper money, and strictly limit the executive branch's authority to pursue war without congressional approval. But today, Federal Reserve notes are legal tender, gold and silver are illegal. The Interstate Commerce Clause is used to regulate all commerce at the expense of the free trade among the states. And now, the final nail is placed in the coffin of congressional responsibility for the war power, delivering this power completely to the President, a sharp and huge blow to the concept of our republic. In my view, it appears that the fate of the American Republic is now sealed, unless these recent trends are quickly reversed. The saddest part of this tragedy is that all these horrible changes are being done in the name of patriotism and protecting freedom. They are justified by good intentions while believing the sacrifice of liberty is required for our safety. Nothing could be further from the truth. More sadly is the conviction that our enemies are driven to attack us for our freedoms and prosperity, and not because of our deeply flawed foreign policy that has generated justifiable grievances and has inspired the radical violence against us. Without this understanding, our endless, unnamed, and undeclared wars will continue, and our wonderful experiment with liberty will end. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Why does Congress feel that it needs to grant the president this power when the presidents, ever since World War II, have just been assuming this power anyway? I mean, Bush and Obama and many presidents before, they never went to Congress to ask for a declaration of war. So what's going on?
Well, exactly, Mike. I mean, it's usually the case with these things. They're merely codifying and justifying what they're already doing. We know that the Obama administration has aggressively accelerated the drone attacks that they've used in Pakistan, Afghanistan, Yemen, and other countries without recourse. You know, they just violate the airspace of sovereign countries, bomb towns and villages. And if that's not already unrestrained worldwide war, then what is? I mean, of course, the Brookings Institute study showed that these drone attacks are killing 10 times the number of innocent people for every so-called militant murdered. So, I mean, this worldwide war resolution is about protecting themselves from war crimes. They're already committing worldwide war with this blanket basis of going after terrorists, and it seems that they're just protecting their own hind end. Well, because to have a legal, justifiable war, you need a pretext that's credible enough to, you know, send the soldiers away to fight and die for American freedom. When no such pretext or justification exists, you basically get a situation which has repeated itself throughout history, where dictators and tyrants go off on global conquest, like Hitler and Napoleon and Stalin and all the rest of them. So that's why it was enshrined in the War Powers Act, which restricts the president from doing this, that they have to get authorization from Congress. But the point that we're seeing with this is the claim that Obama, and this is the ACLU coming out with this, is planning to veto this National Authorization Act if it includes this worldwide war provision that we're talking about. And basically they fell for it big time. If you read the actual letter that the White House sent to Congress in which they threatened to veto this resolution, the Obama administration isn't opposed to the bill because it's an egregious, you know, expansion of federal power of the executive branch. They're opposed to it because it doesn't give the executive branch enough power. And yet the ACLU took this as an example of the Obama administration standing up for the rule of law. So they're saying it doesn't give the executive branch the power to choose between either prosecuting these alleged terrorists or merely murdering them on a whim. So when you come to a compromise on this legislation, which is what the White House is seeking, they're only going to try and strengthen this worldwide war resolution. They're not going to weaken it. And I mean, you were talking about why Congress needs this, why it's happened in the past. I mean, look at Libya. Obama didn't seem too concerned about, getting congressional approval for that ongoing bombardment. And he bypassed it by ludicrously claiming the whole thing was a no-fly zone, when in fact, as we've seen as it's unfolded, it was an aggressive and ongoing act of war. But, I mean, you mentioned Libya again. Senator Rand Paul came out, I believe it was last week, because it was 60 days after the bombardment of Libya began. Now, of course, the War Powers Act directly states that after the expiration of this 60-day period, the president needs to go to Congress and get explicit approval for any war. But, I mean, what did Obama do when Rand Paul brought this up? He merely turned his nose up and claimed his authority came from the UN and international law. And yet this is the same international law that Obama, time and time again, has flagrantly violated with these drone attacks, as well as the so-called raid on the bin Laden compound. So it seems that Obama's exaltation of international law only applies when it suits him. He wants to have his cake and eat it. So it's basically, again, Mr. War is Peace. Obama, the man who has more troops deployed than George W. Bush ever did, is about to be officially bestowed with this global dictator power that allows him to bomb any country in the world with no legal oversight whatsoever.
It's incredible. Where is the anti-war movement on this? Because imagine if, let's say, Bush were still president today and this kind of action was being taken by Congress to give Bush this power, the anti-war movement would have gone crazy over this, saying we can't give these war powers to a president, but why is it okay with the anti-war movement that Obama gets these war powers? They don't realize what can happen down the road with future presidents using the same power.
Well, that's the thing, Mike. I mean, the ACLU is telling all the liberals that Obama's against this because he's standing up for the rule of law and democracy. Well, first time for everything. But then you go and read the actual letter that the White House sent to Congress, and it's got nothing to do with them being concerned about the fact that this authority for worldwide war is, this massive, unrestrained expansion of the executive power. All they're concerned about is they still want the choice to try terrorist suspects in federal court. But they also want the power to just go out and execute anyone who they want, which they did a few weeks ago with this so-called bin Laden raid, if you believe it. So the ACLU is telling the liberals that Obama's against all this, when he's got more troops out there than George W. Bush, when he's bombing Libya with no congressional oversight. And as he said, it seems that these anti-war people, or these left-wingers, only realize that they've been backstabbed by Democrats like Obama when it's too late, because they still can't get it through their thick heads that these presidents only ever serve the military-industrial complex and not the people of the United States of America.
These are principles that we're dealing with here, folks. This is not about granting power to one man, Obama, or a Bush, or the next president. This is about changing the dynamics of the power structure in America that would enable a future tyrant or a present tyrant to commit mass genocide with a sort of legal justification that's really false anyway, but they would say it's justified.
Placing your trust in the White House to veto this is just not going to cut it. I mean, it's passed the House. It's going to the Senate. People need to lobby their senators like mad to try and get this out. They'll probably debate the provision for a while. That's what the White House said they were going to do. But as I said, they're only trying to make it stronger. So in the course of that debate, during that delay, we need to bring this to certainly nationwide and global attention to try and get this worldwide war resolution out there. Which is not to say that they're already doing it. They are.
Real quickly, Paul,
are an act.
Is there a chance that we can stop this in the Senate, or is it almost a done deal?
I don't think it's a done deal because the White House is saying they want to debate this provision.
All right.
Not because they don't like it, but it's not a done deal yet, so there's time to stop it.
We're out of time, Paul. Thanks for joining us. We'll be right back.